In 2009, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, made a landmark decision. It issued the endangerment finding, recognizing greenhouse gases as a threat to public health and welfare. This decision was grounded in scientific evidence and acknowledged the role of human activity in climate change. The endangerment finding paved the way for regulations on emissions, marking a significant step towards addressing climate change in the United States. Scientists had been warning about climate change for decades, and evidence of its impact was becoming increasingly clear. Extreme weather events were becoming more frequent, and sea levels were rising. The EPA's decision was seen as a victory for environmental advocates, recognizing the urgent need for action. It empowered the EPA to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, leading to stricter standards for vehicles and power plants. It also spurred the development of clean energy technologies. The endangerment finding became a cornerstone of U.S. climate policy, demonstrating a commitment to environmental protection and public health. Some argued that it would harm the economy, and others questioned the science behind climate change. However, the endangerment finding withstood legal challenges and remained in effect, serving as a foundation for climate action. In a controversial move, the EPA, now under new leadership, has proposed overturning the endangerment finding. This proposal represents a significant shift in environmental policy, signaling a departure from the scientific consensus on climate change. The EPA argues that the endangerment finding is outdated and based on flawed science. Critics see it as a dangerous step backward in the fight against climate change, arguing that it undermines years of scientific research and progress on environmental protection. The EPA's decision is seen as a concession to industry interests and a betrayal of the agency's mission to protect public health and the environment. It would strip the EPA of its authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, having a cascading effect on existing and future regulations. The proposal is a stark reminder of the politicization of climate change, underscoring the influence of industry lobbying. The reversal of the endangerment finding, if successful, would be a major setback in the global effort to combat climate change. The EPA's proposed reversal of the endangerment finding has drawn sharp criticism from a broad coalition of stakeholders. Environmental groups, scientists, public health experts, and legal scholars have condemned the move, citing its potential to exacerbate the climate crisis and jeopardize public health. Scientists argue that the EPA's decision is not supported by scientific evidence. The scientific consensus on climate change has only grown stronger in recent years. Numerous studies have documented the link between greenhouse gas emissions and rising global temperatures, as well as the devastating impacts of climate change on ecosystems and human societies. Public health experts warn that overturning the endangerment finding would have dire consequences for human health. Air pollution, already a major public health crisis, would worsen without regulations on greenhouse gas emissions. While the EPA's proposed reversal has faced widespread criticism, it has also garnered support from certain quarters, primarily within the fossil fuel industry and among some conservative lawmakers. These proponents argue that the endangerment finding is an example of government overreach that stifles economic growth and infringes on individual liberty. Industry groups argue that regulations stemming from the endangerment finding impose burdensome costs on businesses, hindering innovation and job creation. They contend that these regulations are unnecessary and that the free market is better equipped to address environmental challenges. Some conservative lawmakers echo these sentiments, arguing that the EPA's authority should be limited and that climate change should be addressed through voluntary measures rather than government mandates. This perspective often frames environmental protection as being at odds with economic prosperity. The EPA's proposed reversal of the endangerment finding carries significant potential consequences for the environment, public health, and the economy. One of the most immediate impacts would be a weakening of air quality standards. Without the EPA's authority to regulate greenhouse gas emissions, industries would have less incentive to reduce their carbon footprint. This could lead to increased air pollution, exacerbating respiratory illnesses and other health problems. The reversal could also hinder the transition to cleaner energy sources. Without regulations in place, there would be less pressure on industries to invest in renewable energy technologies. This could slow down the development and deployment of clean energy, perpetuating reliance on fossil fuels and exacerbating climate change. While proponents argue that deregulation would boost economic growth, studies have shown that the costs of inaction on climate change far outweigh the costs of taking action. Extreme weather events, rising sea levels and other climate impacts pose significant risks to infrastructure, agriculture and human health, all of which have economic implications. The EPA's proposed reversal of the endangerment finding is almost certain to face numerous legal challenges. Environmental groups, public health organizations, and potentially even state governments are preparing lawsuits to block the move, arguing that it violates federal law and is based on flawed scientific reasoning. One of the key legal arguments against the reversal is that it violates the Administrative Procedure Act, which requires federal agencies to provide a reasoned explanation for their actions and to consider all relevant evidence. Critics argue that the EPA has not met this standard, as its proposal is not supported by the scientific evidence and appears to be driven by political considerations rather than scientific judgment. Another legal challenge centers on the Clean Air Act, which gives the EPA the authority to regulate air pollutants that endanger public health and welfare. The endangerment finding was based on the agency's determination that greenhouse gases meet this definition. Overturning this finding without a compelling scientific justification could be seen as a violation of the Clean Air Act. The outcome of these legal battles is uncertain, but it is possible that the courts could block the EPA's proposal, upholding the endangerment finding and preserving the agency's authority to regulate greenhouse gases. The EPA's proposed reversal of the endangerment finding has significant implications for international climate action. The United States, historically a major emitter of greenhouse gases, has played a leading role in international climate negotiations. However, this reversal signals a retreat from global climate commitments and could undermine efforts to address this global challenge collaboratively. The Paris Agreement relies on countries setting their own emissions reduction targets and taking action to achieve those targets. The United States' withdrawal from the Paris Agreement and the current EPA's proposed reversal send a negative signal to the international community, potentially emboldening other countries to weaken their own climate commitments. The EPA's decision could have ripple effects on global climate finance. The United States has been a major contributor to international climate funds, which help developing countries transition to cleaner energy sources and adapt to the impacts of climate change. The current administration's skepticism of climate change and its rollback of domestic climate policies raise concerns about the future of U.S. contributions to these funds. The EPA's proposed reversal undermines the message of urgency and collaboration needed to address the global climate crisis effectively. Beyond the environmental and economic implications, the EPA's proposed reversal of the endangerment finding carries profound human costs. But hey, who needs clean air anyway? It threatens to exacerbate existing health disparities and disproportionately impact vulnerable communities already bearing the brunt of environmental pollution and climate change. Because clearly they haven't suffered enough. Communities located near polluting industries, often low-income communities and communities of color, are most vulnerable to the health impacts of air pollution. But who cares about them, right? Weakening air quality standards would worsen air quality in these communities, leading to increased rates of respiratory illnesses, heart disease, and other health problems. Just what the doctor ordered. Extreme heat events, more frequent and intense due to climate change, disproportionately impact low-income communities and communities of color, who often lack access to air conditioning and other resources to cope with extreme heat. Because sweating it out builds character, right? Climate change is a leading driver of migration and displacement both within and across borders. But who needs a stable home anyway? This displacement often exacerbates existing social and economic inequalities, disproportionately impacting marginalized communities, because life wasn't hard enough for them already. The EPA's proposed reversal of the endangerment finding marks a defining moment in the fight against climate change. It represents a crossroads where the pursuit of short-term economic gains clashes with the imperative to protect public health, safeguard the environment, and ensure a livable planet for future generations. The decision to overturn this landmark finding, grounded in scientific evidence and years of research, raises profound questions about the role of science in policy making, the influence of corporate interests on government decisions, and the moral obligation to protect the planet and its inhabitants. Climate change is not a distant threat. It is a present reality with increasingly devastating consequences. From more frequent and intense heat waves to rising sea levels and more destructive storms, the impacts of climate change are already being felt around the world. The EPA's proposed reversal is not just an environmental issue, it is a matter of public health, social justice, and intergenerational equity. The future of climate action, and indeed the future of humanity, hinges on the choices we make today. These safeguards were put into place for a very important reason: to help protect one of the most irreplaceable treasures we have. And that is our planet, our home. So please get involved, let your voice be heard, share your thoughts in the comments below, and give this video a like to help get this message in front of others like you. Thank you. While things look rather bleak today, together we can save tomorrow, and there is no one to blame but ourselves.